after Jesus was crucified, we know that he didn't stay in the tomb, and so now here's the rest of the story. A few days after he had died, some of the women were going to bring spices to put in the tomb where Jesus laid, because that's just kind of a custom that they had. And then when they got to the tomb, they found that Jesus wasn't even there anymore. They looked where the stone was, and it had been rolled away. And they came worrying that maybe Jesus had been moved somewhere. But that isn't what happened. Jesus had risen from the dead, and the angel at the tomb told them that. It had been a sad day when they put it in the tomb, and the first day of the week when their friends walked sadly to the garden tomb, their friend Jesus was dead. They thought he was gone. Suddenly, the women saw angels wearing bright, shining robes. "Were you looking for Jesus here? Jesus is not dead. He's alive. He's risen." And now the women remembered. Jesus told them that he would die and rise again. But as they went to tell others, they said, "Be full of joy." Jesus met them and told them, "Be full of joy." And the women got down on their knees and they worshiped him, and they weren't sad anymore. They were happy. They got up and ran to share the good news with Jesus' other friends. They said, "Jesus is alive." And a little later, some friends were walking from Jerusalem to the city of Emmaus, and they were talking about Jesus' death and resurrection. They wanted to understand what happened, and another man joined them. And the two friends didn't know that that man was Jesus. And he asked what they were talking about. And they said, "Oh, we're talking about Jesus. Haven't you heard? 3 days ago, he was killed on a cross. Now some women have told us that Jesus isn't dead anymore, that he's alive." Jesus listened carefully to what they had said, and then he said some wonderful things. Long ago, God promised to send a Savior, and he would have to die, but he would live again. The two friends must have wondered how this man could know so much about God's promise. And they reached Emmaus at dinner time, and the friends asked Jesus to stay for dinner. Jesus thanked God for the food that he began to give them, and suddenly the two friends recognized that this man was Jesus. And suddenly he was gone, just like that. The excited friends wanted to tell the other disciples the good news that they had seen Jesus, so they hurried back to Jerusalem. Even though they just sat down to eat and it was already dark, they said, "It's true, it's true. Jesus is alive." And they shared about the wonderful things that Jesus had told them. They were so happy. Remember when the men were walking and they were sad that their friend had died and they didn't recognize him? That seems kind of funny to us, because you would think, how would they not know? But somehow Jesus must have done something where they didn't recognize him at first. I'm not really sure, but there's so many miracles that Jesus did and things that he does today. Sometimes we don't recognize his voice right away, but then we realize that that was God talking to us. So that must be what happened. So after the friends realized that it was Jesus and Jesus left them, they ran out and they went to share with the other disciples and other people what had happened. "It's true. It really is true," Jesus' friends said. "We've seen him and he's alive." These friends were very excited and very happy. Suddenly, while they were talking, Jesus was in the room and they were surprised and didn't know what to say. Over the next 40 days, Jesus was with his friends many times. He taught them things that God wanted them to know. Jesus' friends were so happy after that he was with them. But soon, it was time for him to go back to heaven. One day, Jesus and his friends walked to the country and he said, "I want you to go and tell everyone about me. Tell them what you've seen and teach them the things I've told you. And remember, I am always with you, even until the end of the age." Jesus wanted his friends to know that. he would always care for them. Then something wonderful happened. Jesus began to go up from the ground. He rose into the sky, and his friends watched, and a cloud covered Jesus, but they couldn't see him anymore. He must have been very surprised, but Jesus had told them many times that he would go back to heaven. They were happy because they knew Jesus was still alive, even though they couldn't see him. They knew they would see him again someday. And the friends walked back to Jerusalem and went into the temple and sang praises to God. They prayed to God and worshiped him. And the friends were happy because they knew the good news that Jesus is alive, and they knew that he would always care for them.